37-year-old redhead Andy Sutton and her friend Teresa.
Back then, I was going through a divorce. I was just kind of scared to be on my own, and I ran into Andy and met her in a bar, and she just brought me out of a depression and taught me how to live, and we became really close friends quick. I told her she could come stay at my house, you know, that I slept on the couch anyways. She was family to me. We were at the bar, and this guy went by, and she's like, I like that. His name was Glenn Rogers. Love was a big word, you know, and for her to say she loved Glenn was out of the ordinary for her, because the man was a dime a dozen in her opinion, you know. They were all the same, but this one was different. He stayed that one night, and we took him to the bus station, and he looked at me and like really cold and told me, "You take care of her now, you hear?" And I was like, "I will. Dude, go get on your bus."
Glenn had spun a story about having to buy a car and headed south on a one-way ticket to Tampa, Florida.
A couple days later, I'm contacted by the Tampa, Florida Police Department. They had a female victim down there. Glenn Rogers is a suspect in their murder.
Tina Marie Cribbs was a 33-year-old hotel worker who'd gone through a divorce and was doing the best she could for her 2 kids. 2 nights after Glenn rented a room at the Tampa 8 Motel in Florida, the maid, Erica Charleston, came in to clean. Erica would later tell the court what she saw.
The bathroom door was closed. I pushed it open. I could see a body in the tub. Just a piece of her head. I could see that it was a dead person.
Tina had been stabbed twice and her body stripped before being placed in the tub. He was going to commit a murder in the motel room. You put the body in the bathtub before you stab it. That way, when the blood runs out of the body with the shower running, it's not all over the sheets, the blankets, the carpeting, the everything. There's no way. Okay, you leave the body in the tub, it drains all night. In the morning, you roll it up, throw it in the trunk, and drive away. And nobody ever knows it happened.
And it's like a forest fire just went out of control, you know. Bodies were showing up, you know, in different states, you know, down south. And my first inclination was, we've got a serial killer on the loose.
Police believe that Rogers killed 71-year-old Mark Peters in Hamilton and then dumped his body in Beattiesville, Kentucky in January of 1994. From there, L.A. police say he murdered a Santa Monica woman in Van Nuys in September of 1994. L.A. investigators say he is a man with a short fuse who is killing for purely psychological reasons.
Now there were local news reports. My brother was wanted for murder in 3 states. But Glenn hadn't been linked to Tina Marie Cribbs' body in Florida just yet. So by the time he got back to Louisiana, not a soul in them Boursier bars knew Glenn was on a killing spree.
She told me my baby's back in town, and I was like, "Who's your baby?" Her baby was Glenn Rogers.
On Wednesday, November 8th, 1995, my brother Glenn met Andy Sutton at a bar in Boursier City, Louisiana. And then they went back to the apartment she shared with her roommate, Teresa.
I remember waking up, and it was 10 o'clock, and I heard this knock at the door, and I asked, "Who is it?" It was Andy's ex-boyfriend that she had been trying to get back with. So I told him just a minute, because I figured she was back there with Glenn, And I didn't want that situation to be a drama scene, so I went and knocked on the door and I got no answer. And I knocked again and I got no answer. And then I finally just opened the door, and when I went in there, the covers on my waterbed were just tucked like there was something wrapped under the blanket. And I called out her name and I heard nothing. And then I pushed on the blanket and still nothing. Everything happened so fast. I pulled the blanket off of her, or off of whatever was under the covers at that time. I pulled the blanket down, and there was a pillow on somebody's head, and it was a person because there was a naked body there, but I didn't know if it's a boy or a girl because it was so flat. Everything was flat. And when I pulled the pillow, I pulled the covers down further, I noticed it was a girl. And I called her name and no answer, and I pulled the pillow off of her head. And she had this horrible, excruciating look on her face.
Call came in that there had been a deceased person discovered, believed it was a homicide, and directed me to 400 Preston Place apartment. There was a pile of dirty clothes next to the bed. We went through that pile of dirty clothes and we found a large butcher knife. Whoever had done this was taking out an awful lot of aggression on this lady's body. Multiple stab wounds. She had defensive wounds on her fingers and her arms. It was just a brutal death, bad. During my interview with Teresa, she had told me that Glenn's truck was at her apartment. I ran Glenn Rogers through NCIC, and it came back a hit.
Police now suspect Glenn Rogers in 6 killings, 1 in Ohio with the body dumped in Kentucky, 2 in California, 1 in Florida, 1 in Mississippi, and 1 in Louisiana.
My brother had killed 3 women in a week, and that was all over the news, all over the country.
Hamilton homicide investigators say they are working with Kentucky State Police and the Los Angeles Police Department in the widening hunt for Glenn Rogers.
Paul Schaefer was a local reporter who took a personal interest in trying to stop the killings. He even went to see my mom to talk her into doing something about Glenn.
On the day I showed up at Edna Rogers' front door, the trajectory and the intensity and the seriousness of this spree and the sense that we all had that this could get worse before it got better, it was very important to reach Edna and at least try and get a message out to him.
Glenn, please, if you hear this, I'm begging you, please give up, please. I love you very much and I believe in you, please. Please give up.
When the murders became big news, Glenn's phone calls to my family started turning nasty.
I was begging him. I said, Glenn, I'll come to you and I'll go with you. And he said, no, they'll shoot me. There's a shoot to kill on me. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, I don't know if I would ever kill anybody I'm related to, but I'm not sure.
After talking with police officers and detectives and family members and others who had interacted with Glenn in earlier years, It was very clear that he came from a very dysfunctional home, and it was my sense strongly that this was a man that likely wanted to kill his mother and others, but principally her.
I know you don't want to hurt me. You love me too much, and I love him.
She thought he was coming back to kill her and Bob, her boyfriend at the time.
My mom, Edna, had started seeing Bob after our dad, Claude, had been turned into a cripple by a stroke. She'd been nursing my dad back to health for 2 years until his death in 1987, and then moved Bob in, which totally pissed Glenn off.
You know, it might seem surprising to people. Why would he lash out at his mother if his father or others were actually the sources of the abuse? And there's a dynamic in dysfunctional families where the person who should have protected him, not necessarily the abuser, but the person that should have protected him from the abuser, becomes the focus of a great deal of anger and hostility. Glenn was killing his mother repeatedly in these women he killed.
Glenn had told me when I come full circle, he said, I want you to kill me. He wants to pass on the demon when he comes full circle. That's why he was coming back to Hamilton. He was going to come back around and kill anybody. He says, you'll either end up shooting me or I'll shoot you.
He's left a trail of mutilated victims stretching from Los Angeles to Tampa.
On the FBI's most wanted, hunted for 5 murders in 5 states. He's on the run, armed and dangerous.
Now it's November 13th, 1995, and my brother Glenn Rogers is the most wanted man in America, with state police and the FBI on his tail.
Last seen leaving the murder scene in Tampa.
Rogers is
Monday.
armed and very dangerous.
And where is Glenn? He's drinking beer down the road from the family cabin. When the police spotted him, the chase was on.
He rolled his window down, threw a beer can out, hitting on the front of my car, on the hood of my car. He then drank another beer and threw it out, hit on the hood of my car. I was afraid that this may be a bit shootout. You know, he may decide this is the way I'm going out.
The police set roadblocks on Highway 52. And federal agents picked me up to be a negotiator if Glenn got trapped and started shooting.
At the time it's happening, I didn't have a lot of time to think about what I was actually doing. I was mainly in shock at what was going on, at what they thought that my brother had done and what they had planned to do to him.
Come on, let's go!
They were hoping to get there in time to prevent any problem that might happen with his arrest. Maybe from being shot and killed.
My brother was still driving the white Ford Festiva he'd stolen from Tina Marie Cribbs after killing her in Florida. He pushed that little car to over 100 miles an hour before troopers ran him off the road outside Waco, Kentucky.
You okay? Everybody's all right. Everybody's all right. I'm all right. Get up, then front. Where have you been hiding, Mr. Rogers? Where have you been, sir? How many people have you killed, Mr. Rogers? Huh? How many people?
You know, looking at this is emotional for me. This was a victim's car, and in that car was pieces of her jewelry and earrings, and there was a lipstick thing, and seeing that car made it very, very, very personal.
Glenn, did you do this? One-on-one, talk to me in person alone. Did you do this, Glenn? Did you kill those women, Glenn? One-on-one alone. At the jail, you interview me. Did you kill the women? You hear me? Did you kill these women, Glenn? No.
good and evil.